Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the reports that a group of roughly 150 Conservative MPs have warned Rishi Sunak not to pull back from commitments on net zero for fear of losing their seats in the blue wall. Now, I'd mentioned before that Sunak's irrational knee-jerk reaction on climate policy, pandering to a self-defeating fringe of his party, would backfire. If this much larger group of MPs decides to stop sitting on the sidelines and start fighting for control of party policy, could be a huge headache for Sunak. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, quick look at the timeline on Sunak's descent into eco-madness. The Tories retained the seat of Oxbridge and South Ruislip in a by-election which Labour had never won, but nonetheless polling indicated this was their time. The Tory strategy of making it a campaign about the misunderstood ULEZ scheme in London worked, and they won the seat. Only just, but they won. The anti-net zero crowd within the Conservative Party then successfully lobbied Sunak to convince him that this is voters not in favour of pro-climate policies, even though ULEZ is not a climate policy and was just a fringe local issue, which is not going to be a significant factor in the general election. But Sunak thought he could extrapolate this into a wedge issue which would work nationally. He was powerfully wrong. I was talking about an article in the Times yesterday which reported that the Conservatives think they've got public support against Just Stop Oil. When I say Conservatives, I mean the people deciding strategy. So they think they've got public support against Just Stop Oil. This is a very bad reading of things. As I said, the public do support their action against some of their specific protests, particularly blocking roads, but the public actually support Just Stop Oil's aims. Sunak immediately swung into gear by issuing a huge number of new licences for exploitation of oil and gas in the North Sea. Some blue wall Tories sounded the alarm. Much of the public is fully seized of the climate emergency, despite the disinformation in the mainstream media. This includes Conservative voters in their heartlands. And I said a while ago, Sunak risks becoming trapped here. So let me explain the risk to his insane new strategy. The anti-net zero crowd are not a huge part of the parliamentary party. They might be significant. But it does include the sort of characters who were the political vandals who forced our extreme Tory Brexit, even though most of the Conservative Party did not want that. By threatening to split the party and make them look so chaotic that they couldn't possibly win the following election, they successfully forced a series of weak leaders to pursue policies of appeasement in order to keep them under control. These are MPs who've been used to getting their way by and large. They have now got on their way again as Sunak has pivoted to policies which work against net zero. Yes, Sunak is still claiming that he's pursuing net zero. These MPs don't care what he says, only what he does. Right now, they're quite happy with his change of position. But if he were to be forced to change his position back again, they would not be happy. They've got a lot of support in the Tory media, mostly because they are essentially the foot soldiers for the anti-climate agenda pursued by, amongst others, those who own most of our news media. If Sunak is seen to U-turn again, he might find himself facing threats to destabilise the party. At the end of October, for example, Sunak will have been party leader for 1 year, which means that if 15% of his MPs submit letters of no confidence, he will face a confidence vote. A very public attack on him. Now, I'm not sure there are enough anti-net zero MPs to do this if they don't like Sunak's behaviour, but there are a few rebels who might join in for other reasons. So then we look at the other side. Another report in the Times this today says that a group of blue wall MPs, representing about 150 of them, has told Sunak to ignore those pressing for him to water down net zero targets. It quoted Chris Skidmore as saying that net zero isn't just about the environment, about which many of them don't care, but very much part of the economies of the future. And this is true. Even if a Conservative doesn't understand science well enough to understand the climate emergency and how Britain is particularly imperilled by it, they can understand that the global economy is moving towards net zero and we're going to get left behind. And though Chris Skidmore is one of the relatively grounded Tory MPs, the majority of this 150 strong group, I'm sure, understand neither the science nor the economics, but they do understand threats to their election chances. And that's enough. You might have been forgiven for asking why, if so many Tory MPs knew that a hard Brexit would be bad, why they went along with it. And it was because fear of the Brexit zealots splitting their party. But they didn't think their own seats were under threat as a result. It was more that it would be bad for the country than for them. So they just, let it go. This is where net zero is very different to Brexit. The same people who aggressively pushed a hard Brexit are pretty much the same people aggressively pushing moves against net zero. It is no coincidence that it's the same political thugs largely doing so. They're paid by the same people. But this time, many of the moderates are having their seats threatened by the policy. It's not just that it's a bad policy for the country, it's bad for them. Labour are already making some safe seats very marginal. Issues like this matter to the sort of voter who might easily be persuaded to not vote Conservative, whether stay at home or vote for someone else. Sunak's attempts to try to make the public fearful of a Labour government, which is very much part of his new strategy, will fail. Can't work. People aren't scared of Starmer. So we have a situation whereby this group of 150 MPs, most of whom have sat by and gone along with what they know are some truly awful policies, could actually just make a stand here. Because after all, if they lose their seat, then not only do they lose their cushy little number as an MP, it's also very bad for the party. So in their own minds, they're not just acting out of selfish interest. It's in the interests of the party. Interestingly, the article noted that quite a few MPs were also appalled by Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick's suggestion that we could leave the European Convention on Human Rights, a smaller number of MPs in this case, but nonetheless a group vocally opposed to another insane policy which is badly out of kilter with the public, so threatens their seats. In fact, at the weekend, I noticed the Express, which is the paper of choice for the clinically insane, ran a poll asking if we should leave the convention if the Supreme Court ruled the Rwanda plan illegal. 74% said no. So even the Express cannot arrange a poll to support this nonsense. Essentially, Sunak is playing a very dangerous and above all a very stupid game here. It's all very well saying that issuing all these new North Sea licences actually helps our efforts on net zero, because he said that. But target voters aren't that stupid. I know it might be easy to think otherwise given what they've been voting for recently, but there are limits. This is massively playing into Labour's hands, who've actually been quite bold in terms of their net zero offer. Now, given that bold is not exactly a word you would use about Labour under Starmer, I took this as a sign that their own polling was supremely confident that this is what target voters overwhelmingly want. In other words, it's not a risk for them to back it like this. And more general public polls, which are the only ones I have access to, also back this up. The Tories must either not have any polling analysts working for them, or they must be completely ignoring them, because Sunak is playing into Labour's hands here. As for allowing a government minister to even muse on leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, because it'd be different if it was a backbencher, they don't decide policy. Ministers do. So when you've got a minister saying this, it's almost like it's Conservative party policy. That is a threat to a lot of Tory seats, which could be Lib Dem targets. Sunak is basically deliberately moving his party into a pincer between Labour and the Lib Dems here. And I keep looking at polls which suggest the Tories could be left with fewer than 150 seats after the election. I think that, the result is going to be bad. It won't be that bad. There are a few advantages the Tories have, which polls conducted before campaigns can't possibly take account of. But if there is a credible chance that the Tories end up with fewer than 150 seats, this is how they do it. It's like Sunak's advisors are desperate to make themselves look different to their Labour and Lib Dem competition. But it's been different for the sake of being different. Oh, look, Labour have policies to save the environment. OK, we'll give people a real choice by adopting policies to destroy it. Oh, while we're at it, we'll have policies to obliterate all human rights laws as well. That'll give voters a clear choice in the election. Yeah. So this autumn could be interesting. There are already some Tory MPs want to destabilise Sunak just for the hell of it. They're not large in number, but when you add nearly 200 MPs who feel that Sunak is flying in the face of what their voters want, who think that if Sunak carries on down this line, they're not going to be an MP after the election. At that point, it's almost like, at the moment, like no one will really, well, not a large number of MPs will really try to displace Sunak. And the reason is they'll look like clowns and it will work against them in the election. But if they're already convinced that the path Sunak is taking is going to cost them that seat anyway, what's to lose? What is to lose? So you've got the ingredients here for a serious rebellion if Sunak doesn't play his cards right. And Sunak does not have a history of playing his cards right. Apart from anything else, this latest policy pivot from Sunak was stupid for two main reasons. First, it's unpopular with the public. He has spent so long attending to the internal fractures within his parliamentary party, he hasn't been paying any attention to what his target voters want. Second, if you're going to adopt controversial policies, you must have the backing of your parliamentary party. He changed his policies without even sounding MPs out. Just did it. It's been obvious for a while, but this man just does not understand the basics of politics at all. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.